Your secrets, if you really look at yourself, you would be speechless. What happened to being doctors and teachers? What happened to being your brother's keeper? Nowadays, kids more.
Yo, what's good, y'all? It's your boy, Mr.BandClap, and we in the building with another podcast, y'all. Today, I'm going to be talking about Babalou and just talking about be careful how you treat people, because that one person that you talk bad about or that one person that you shit on now may be the person that you may have to ask for help in the future. So I'm going to be just talking about that. This one is going to be a little bit personal. So I'll be talking about my life a little bit and all the things that I went through in Atlanta when I first got there. So this is going to be a real dope podcast, y'all. So shout out to Al Poe, shout out to Lady V the Poet. I'm going to be showcasing their video after this podcast, so stay tuned for that. Got a lot to talk about. So let's get the show on the road. Alright, y'all, so we back. Welcome to another BandClap TV podcast. You already know, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to all of the thousands of people who checked out my podcast that I did about the woman's imprint. I love y'all. And as I said before, shout out to Ron Wills, shout out to Hood Mystic for the interview that I was able to do with him. That was a real dope interview. Was able to touch a lot of things when it came to spirituality and things like that. And I'm just grateful to find like-minded people who are willing to work with a YouTuber like myself who's just starting up as far as trying to get subscribers and things like that. So I appreciate that. So today my podcast is going to be about be careful how you treat people. The story of Babalou, which is the Orisha of smallpox and the Orisha of sickness, as well as on the flip side the Orisha of healing and the Orisha of prosperity in a lot of different paths as well. So before I get into that, I got a few announcements that I want to make. So shout out to Al Poe, shout out to Lady V the Poet. She has a birthday, so shout out to her. Happy birthday to you, Lady V. And also, she was gracious enough to send me her new video that she's came out with that's called The Revolution, produced by Al Poe. You already know. So at the end of this podcast, I'm going to showcase that full video. So y'all stick around to the end so y'all can see this lady spit some bars in a smooth and poetic way, which I really like because it's unique. And it kind of reminds me of these Facebook posts that I've been seeing lately about these underground backpack rappers as well as female rappers and singers as well. And then they have the caption saying that this is what real hip hop sounds like and all of that. And I hear a lot of people talking about how real hip hop is dead and where's all the real hip hop out there and all of that. But I mean, it's all around you. You're just tuned in to the quote unquote mainstream, which the mainstream only cares about money. They only care about a certain image and they only care about completing out a certain agenda. So that funnels out a lot of very, very good talent, because if you don't fit a certain mold that they can use for the agenda that's being placed out to our black children and all of that to keep us in this sleeping state that we are in right now, you get overlooked and you get cast out, you know, kind of like Babalou, which I'm going to talk about later. So shout out to Al Poe, shout out to Lady V. I'll be playing that video later. And also I have another announcement, and that is BandClap TV is about to move into radio. You heard right, BandClap Radio is literally right around the corner. I've linked up with this radio station, I think it's WIAN Network, and one of the people heard my Cardi B remix that I did on Havana and they really liked it and they want to give me my own radio show on that radio station. So shout out to WIAN Network. I'll be working with them very soon, and as soon as more details arise, I'll be giving y'all the information. So if y'all want y'all music on the radio station or any promo, yes, there will be some fees involved because a nigga gotta eat. but it won't be too much, and I'll definitely keep y'all in the loop when it comes to that. So alright y'all, so let's get into it. So one of the things that as a kid my mom used to tell me all the time was, be careful who you're entertaining, because that person might be an angel. And I never truly understood what she said until I got a lot older and moved out the house. But I remember my mom used to tell me these stories about how she was in danger and things like that, and an old man or an old dog or something like that would just come and help her out of nowhere. And those stories kind of stuck with me. So as a kid, I used to get in trouble for talking to certain people, giving money to the homeless, doing stuff for the homeless and stuff like that. Even as a high school kid, I used to get ridiculed because I was one of them guys that never really like to hang around the popular kids in school. I was hanging out with the losers and the nerds and the lames and the anime people, the video game nerds and things like that. But also on the flip side, I was able to go from one side to the other, kind of like in a legba, because even though I was able to relate to the lames and the nerds and the geeks because I had some of that in me as well, I was able to hang out with a lot of the popular kids too because I could rap and I was damn good at it too. Like, I used to get my respect by battling people in the cafeteria. You know, I don't know if a lot of y'all may be too young to remember that, but back in the day, if you wanted some respect, you would wait till lunchtime and you would rap battle with the dopest rapper in the whole class or in the whole group. And if you can beat that person in the rap battle, now you're a part of the team. So with that, I was able to go from one group to the other, like how a legba can go from the light side to the dark side, and he has the keys to both of those roads. So as a result of that, I never really had to fight like that. I mean, I've never been in a situation where I just had to fight, and the reason why is because I always had people around me that kind of looked out for me on each side. Even when it came down to the gangs at school, I had friends who were blood. I also had friends who were Crip, Vice Lord, GD, and since I myself wasn't a part of a gang, they all looked out for me. You know, a lot of these dudes, I was writing raps for them and making beats for them and, you know, hooking them up with people that can do their homework. I was good in the streets simply because I wasn't a part of it. So I was able to mix and mingle with everybody. So as a kid growing up, I always had what you would call a good heart and a welcoming spirit. You know, I can be cool with anybody, and I can definitely say that my mom was a huge part in that. Now, with all that being said, you have certain times in your life where your heart gets tested to see if you're really as strong-willed as you say you are, or if you're just gonna fall by the wayside like so many other people who goes on this journey. Because the journey is never easy, but in the end, it's the greatest success story of all time if you can just stick with it. So talking about Babalou, also talking about being careful how you treat people, and also talking about the homeless people and stuff like that and what all they have to do with Babalou leads me to experiences that happened in my life from 2012 all the way till 2014 when I moved to Atlanta. So this story is kind of personal for me because not a lot of people know about this. You know, not a lot of people know all the things that I really went through in Atlanta when I first got there. But for the sake of this video, I'm gonna go ahead and shed light on a couple things regarding that. So in mid to late 2012, I came from MTSU from doing a year there, and things didn't really work out the way they were supposed to, and I ended up going back home, getting a job, working at the temp service, and not giving up, but I had a very defeated mindset because I just had this dream that I was just gonna go to MTSU and graduate and do all of these great things, and things just didn't turn out like that. So I came home, so I was working with this temp service, and while I was working for this temp service, this older man named Okon was there, and Okon, he talked about a lot of controversial type of topics, things that just make you think when it comes to religion and Christianity and different conspiracies and just different things that happens around the world that should be common sense, but since we're blinded by different religions and things like that, we don't see the big picture. And a lot of people kind of wrote him off as this crazy person or whatever because a lot of the stuff that he would say was borderline insane to the regular minded person. But one day I ended up having to be at his table because I think we were fixing light bulbs or we was putting together something, and they moved me over to his table where he was talking about this stuff, and I just listened to him and I was like, man, a lot of this stuff that he's saying, it kind of makes sense. And there was one thing that Okan always said, and that was, don't never believe me. I don't want you to believe me. I want you to look it up for yourself. And he would give different articles and different things to read and different things to look up. And in the end, me and Okan became real good friends. And he opened my mind up to a lot of things, because unlike the other people at work, the stuff that he would tell me to look up and research, I would actually research it, and it made me question a lot of things. So I can say that Okan was the first person to really put me on that journey to consciousness. Now from him, because even after I left that job, me and Okan was real cool. So we would hang out and, just swap knowledge and wisdom and stuff like that. And during our conversations, I found out that he was a rapper and that he rapped and he did things with music, and I did too. So we ended up connecting on a different level, on a musical level, which then led me to this guy named Barry that Okan knew. And Barry, he knew some people at Royal Studios in Memphis, a very iconic studio. And before I know it, now I got an interview with one of the top people that's there. So now I'm in this iconic studio looking around, just taking in all the history that's going on. And while I was there, I kept seeing this other strange old man with a big ass mustache and a damn kufi on his head, and how everybody in the studio was just acting like he was just this Don Juan or something. Now, mind you, I didn't know that this person that I've been seeing at the studio all this time was Drake's dad, because I never equated the name DJ or none of that. I never equated that to Drake's dad. I didn't even know that Drake had a dad from Memphis until he came out and said it. And even when he came out and said it, I still didn't believe it, because you had a lot of people that was, faking, saying that they was cool with this celebrity and they know this celebrity, but they was just full of it. And I remember one night when I went to the studio, because the guy that was over it, he told me, he was like, I want you to put together a CD of some of your dopest beats, and next time you come to the studio, I want you to bring that CD and we're gonna listen to it and tell you which beats that we want and which beats that we want to pay for and all of that, and we're really gonna get your music out there. So I was like, okay, cool, that's what's up, man. So I went home, got to work, had like 30 beats on the CD, and when it was time for me to go back to Royal Studios, I went back and played the CD in the studio. Now DJ, aka Drake's dad, he was in the other room, doing work, whatever he does or whatever. And I remember I played Pleasure for Pain. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. I played Pleasure for Pain, that beat. And I remember how Drake's dad came out of whatever room he was in, came to the studio that I was at, and he was like, yo, hold up, run it back. So he played the beat over and he was jamming. He was like, oh my God, like, this is dope. I like this. So once they finished listening to the CD and they picked out the beats that they wanted, I remember how Drake's dad, DJ, pulled me to the side and he was like, look, man, I have young cats come in here all the time saying that they produce and saying that they rap and all of that, because they know that I'm Drake's dad. So they think that if they give me their mixtape or their beat tape, that I'm just gonna give it to Drake and they're just gonna be popular. And he told me, he was like, most of the guys who come to me like that, I literally throw their CD right out the car. But he was like, but yours, I really love the music that you do, and if you gave me this beat CD, I would proudly give it to Drake. And with that being said, because from a previous conversation, he knew that at the time my beats wasn't copyrighted, and he told me, he was like, I could easily just take this beat CD right now and give it to Drake, but if I did that and your shit ain't together, aka your music ain't copyrighted and all of that, I'll feel bad if they take advantage of you, the record label take advantage of you and not want to give you your just due, simply because of some stuff that you could have prevented just by going to the copyright website and just paying that little $35 to get your music copyrighted. So he told me that once I get my stuff copyrighted and get it mixed and mastered to the industry standard, to bring it back up to the studio, and he'll help me out. Now, after that conversation, I never seen DJ again, because see, the thing about DJ is he's always moving around, he's always up to something. You know, he's never just still. He's always up to something. And it's hella hard to contact him. And it's even more harder to run into him. So that taught me a lesson within itself, as if you stay ready, you never got to get ready. So I missed out on that opportunity, but there was another opportunity that was just around the corner that was about to change my life forever. And that opportunity was that the head record executive of OTS Records in Atlanta got a whiff of the stuff that I was recording and the beats that I was making. And not only did he want to meet me, he wanted to sign me to a producer deal in Atlanta. So my life pretty much changed from that point. And everything that I was doing, everything that I was praying about, everything that I was producing, it was all based around me going to Atlanta. And I remember how happy I was when he told me that. And I also remembered how I was thinking to myself, okay, so how am I going to get to Atlanta? I mean, I know that that's where I'm going to next, but how the heck am I going to get there? So one day I was at McDonald's, which back then was the hangout spot, because the McDonald's that was right by my house, it was like the best looking McDonald's around the whole neighborhood, simply because they just built it not too long ago. And plus, it was right next to C&M Lounge, which was a new club / bar that opened up. And shout out to Behave and Nina 9 and Unique and Deuce Dundee, because he used to hold something called BSR Thursdays, and which was this showcase that Behave would throw, and a lot of artists would come and perform. And I mean, it was real dope. It was real dope. And that got my foot in the door due to other reasons that I'm gonna talk about in some other podcasts. But long story short, I was able to rub elbows with this dope ass DJ called DJ Pinky, and he was an older cat who didn't mind showing me the ropes when it came to DJing and MCing and stuff like that. I can say that DJ Pinky taught me a lot of the things that I know now when it came to DJing. He was the first one to really put me on that road. So as you can see, I've had a lot of Alegbas and Babalou in my life that helped me out with certain things. That's why I am the way I am now. So back to McDonald's. So I was at this McDonald's. I was a little short, money a little short. I'm like, man, I really want a chicken wrap. I ain't got nothing but like $2. And I know if I had $2 more, I can get me a chicken wrap. So I look across from me and I see this big guy on his laptop with this tight ass blue shirt on. I'll never forget it. That man's shirt was so tight. That man looked like one of them big ass seals that was caught up in the oil spill. Man, I swear this nigga gonna kill me when he hear this podcast. Alright, y'all, I'm finna stop playing. But I'm so done. But yeah, so I walked up to him. I was like, yo, what's up, man? You know, I introduced myself to him and he introduced himself to me. I mean, he could barely talk because his shirt was so tight, it was squeezing his vocal cords. Alright, I'm gonna stop playing. The reason why I be flaming this dude is because when me and him talk on the phone, because we still cool to this day, when me and him talk on the phone, he be flaming the mess out of me to his friends and stuff. And just like I'm not good at freestyling, I was never good at checking on the spot. But give me a few minutes to think about it and I'll flame you. But I was never good at checking on the spot. So y'all may know this guy as Ty Gemini, but I knew him as Sam, because on into the conversation, number one, I didn't know that he was a rapper. Number two, I didn't know how big of a rapper that Sam was. I mean, this dude done opened up for Erykah Badu and Maxwell, and you know, he was on street scenes with the lady. Shout out to the lady. He used to come on Fox TV. So you know, this dude was kind of known. And not only that, the reason why he was on his laptop was because at the time he was working on his master's degree. So not only was he street smart, but he was also book smart. So me and Sam, we ended up talking, and I ended up seeing him almost every time that I was at McDonald's, because while I was there on my computer, he was on his laptop doing homework and stuff like that. And long story short, the reason why he had that tight blue shirt on was because he was working for a staffing company and at this warehouse called Williams-Sonoma. And I remember how Sam told me that he was in the same situation that I'm in right now, and an older cat helped him out, and he said that since he received help and he see that I'm in the same situation, he wanted to help me as well. And I appreciate that to this day. He's my brother. So long story short, again, he ended up not only getting me a job, which was working at Williams-Sonoma, 12-hour shifts. I think I was making like $9.50 an hour or something like that. And a little bit after I started working for Williams-Sonoma, Sam dipped out, because little did I know, he was actually headed back to Atlanta. He already went to Georgia State and got a degree there, so he's already been in Atlanta. He already knows about Atlanta, and he was telling me about Stone Mountain, and he was telling me about the Stone Mountain Inn, and how I need to make sure I save up enough money and come out there once I got everything saved up and all of that, and how once I got up here to Atlanta, he was gonna meet me there and make sure I was straight. So things ended up falling through with Williams-Sonoma, and I had a choice to either quit or go to Olive Branch, which the other Williams-Sonoma warehouse was, and I didn't have a way out there, so I ended up leaving that job. Now mind you, I already got about $1,200, $11 to $1,200 saved up, because when I tell you I was serious about going to Atlanta, I was serious. Out of all the money that I got out of my checks, the only money that I would spend is to get some lunch food for work, pay my phone bill, and that's really it. I didn't even let my mom and dad know about when I got paid or anything like that, so they wouldn't even be asking me for money. So I secretly saved up about $1,200 by the time I left Williams-Sonoma, and I was only there from November to December. So for that month, I saved up $1,200. So during that time, I started going through a lot of family issues, which I just got to my wits end, and I just said, I can't take it no more. I'm finna just go ahead and prematurely leave in December of 2012 and go ahead and move to Atlanta. Now, all of this time, from November to December, I haven't even heard from Sam. I called him, his voicemail would come on, so I pretty much thought that he deserted me like everybody else did. But when I touched down in Atlanta, and then I hit him up and I said, yo, I'm here, this dude just magically just hit me up like, where you at? And long story short, we ended up linking up in Atlanta, and he made sure that I was cool during that time, because little did I know he was about to leave again. But I mean, that's how Alegbas do, and I really, from retrospect, feel like that in that time Sam was really my Alegba, because he opened up that road for me by giving me that job at Williams-Sonoma, where I could save up the money that I saved up to get to Atlanta. And I got to Atlanta. And going back to the subject, moving a little bit forward, the fact that Sam decided to help me out when I was down on my luck, it kind of backfired on him in a beautiful way, because in 2014, when I got my first apartment in Stone Mountain, Sam was at that point where he was just moving from South Dakota, going through Miami, and he was in Georgia. He didn't have no place to go, and he was at that point of homelessness. And since I remember how he helped me back in 2012, I ended up linking back up with him, and he ended up staying with me for a while. Alright, so back to the story. So once I got to Atlanta, I linked up with the head of OTS Records along with DJ Kurt. Shout out to DJ Kurt, because he was his in-house producer at the time. And for a couple weeks, I ended up staying in his house. The guy who was over OTS Records, I was staying in his house for a while, because I was just staying at the Stone Mountain Inn, and I didn't have nowhere to go at that time. So I stayed in his house, and while I was there, it was this old homeless man that would come over sometimes. And I remember how that old homeless man would tell me that you need to get you a homeless letter, and he was telling me about all these places that I need to go and all of that to get food stamps and all of this stuff. And I'm just looking at him like, dude, like, I'm not about to be homeless, dude. Like, I'm about to produce some hit records here, and I'm about to make a name for myself, and I'm about to be a freaking Grammy Award winning producer. Because that's how big my ego was back then. But at the time, as more as I made my presence known within the studio, I started to see things change, and the change wasn't really for the good. And this was before I was officially signed. You know, I was just a regular person that was there, and artists would come over, and DJ Kurt would be playing my beats, because he used to help me mix and master a lot of the beats that I would make over there. And a lot of the artists would be like, yo man, is that your beat? And DJ Kurt was like, no, you know, this kid right here, you know, Mr.BandClap, this is a BandClap beat. Like, yo man, I want that, let me get that, how much you want to sell that for, and all of that. And it started getting to the point where I was around so much that the artists, a lot of them, they would come to me first. They're like, yo, so Mr.BandClap, what you think about this? I want to get your opinion on this song, or I want to get your opinion on this, or what type of beat that you think will go with this, or something like that. And it got to the point where the guy that was the head of OTS was like, look, at the end of the day, I can't have you taking my clientele, or not taking my clientele, but he was kind of like, when the artists come over and they want to ask questions to me, he was pretty much like, either don't say anything trying to big yourself up because you're not signed, just pretty much don't say anything, or refer them back to the in-house producer, which was DJ Kurt. Now, me and Kurt, we don't have any beef between each other. We cool. Like, Kurt, he's the one that taught me how to scratch. When it came to DJing, he's like the dopest scratcher, and I mean from vinyls. He's like the dopest scratcher that I know. But even Kurt saw where things was going as well, and he told me not to sign the contract. But I mean, I was in that position where I didn't really have nowhere to go. I mean, I was in Atlanta. My money was slowly running out. I've never been homeless before, so I was terrified of being homeless. And on top of all that, I was still mad at the stuff that went down in my family. So going back to Memphis wasn't even part of the conversation at all. So I was pretty much like, man, you know what? How bad can it be, right? So as time went on, I had to end up signing to OTS under a producer deal. And I was talking to this girl at the time that was in the industry as well. And one day I went to her place and she looked at the deal that I signed, and she was like, what the fuck? And I'm like, what's up? Like, what you talking about? And she was like, you just gonna let these niggas fuck you like this with no Vaseline? And I'm like, no, wait, hold up. What you talking about? She was like, nigga, do you know that he put in this contract that not only can you not make beats for nobody else or anything like that, this nigga pretty much own you, and you're not even really entitled to no money for making these beats for him. And then she started to break down the different wording and all of that stuff that was in the contract. She was like, yo, nigga, you fucked up in the game. Like, yo. So spiritually, that really fucked me up when it came to that. And my morale was so low that during that time, I didn't even really make any beats like that, which led to him ultimately kicking me out the house because he wanted me to make a certain amount of beats per day, or a certain amount of beats per month, or something like that. And he wanted them all a certain way and all of that. And spiritually at the time, I just wasn't in that mode creatively to even do that. And we ended up bumping heads. And long story short, I ended up leaving there and staying with the woman that was telling me about how bad the contract was. Because side story, me and her, we was talking ever since I was still in Memphis, so we was already real cool. But even that didn't last long, because I mean, at the end of the day, how long are you gonna have somebody with you that has no job and no money? So that didn't last long, and I ended up finding myself at the Salvation Army, and that's where my journey began. But things wasn't as bad as they could have been, simply because everything that homeless guy was telling me to do back when I was still staying with the guy from OTS Records, I listened to him, and I was able to not only get food stamps, I was able to get my homeless letter and all of that. And from every shelter that I went to, I would always get help as well as wisdom from the homeless people, the people that you would call bums, or the people that you would call beggars and things like that. So I always had a special place in my heart when it came to the homeless and things like that, because when I was in that position, they was the first one to help me. Which brings me to the story of Babalou, because speaking of Atlanta, I had a revelation today, and I don't know if this was a channel or whatever, but it made me remember how underground Atlanta used to be from when I first got there in 2012 to the way it is when I left in 2016, and how run down and unattractive underground is. And the spirit of Babalou was kind of telling me that it was him that did that to the underground Atlanta. So let me explain that, because for all the people who are in Atlanta, y'all know that at a certain time of night, I would say like 10, 11, 12, around that time of night, if you're downtown or close to the underground Atlanta, or even in a lot of places in Midtown, you will see that just out of nowhere, a whole bunch of homeless people come out, and it's almost like a Thriller video. And they all come out at around the same time of night, walking the streets with their baskets and their blankets and their cardboard mattresses and things like that. And they usually come out begging for money and a place to stay and things like that. And me seeing that and being homeless myself, when I would walk up to them and they would try to get money from me, and I would tell them, yo man, I'm homeless too. I mean, I don't got nothing to give you because I'm homeless myself. And that same homeless man that was begging for money, his whole tune would change. Like, yo man, if you need some food or whatever, you can go to this church up the street and they give free food in the morning. Or if you need some clothes, you can go to this place over here and show them your homeless letter and they'll give you some clothes and all of that stuff. Even when it came to me being sick, because being homeless and sick is the worst combination. And these homeless people would tell me these remedies and these different things that you can get out the department store that'll just take whatever sickness you got, just take it right on out. And looking at that in retrospect, I know that it was Babalou, that spirit, that helped me. Because getting to the Orishas, Babalou, his avatar is an old man, a lame man, a man who wears crutches because he can't hardly walk. He walks with a limp, and he's depicted with flies and things like that around him because he's depicted as like an old bummy homeless man. And in the Bhakti that I'm going to talk about today, it talks about how there was this big celebration going on in the land of the Orishas, and everybody was dancing for the king and having a good time. So Babalou, he went to the party and he wanted to dance too. So when he got out in the middle of the circle and tried to dance, one of his crutches slipped out from under him and he fell flat on his face because he couldn't hardly walk. So all the Orishas laughed at him and cast him out the party on some spiteful shit. And Babalou, them not knowing how powerful he really was, he came back and started to give all of the Orishas smallpox. And it got so out of hand because Babalou introduced smallpox as well as sickness and death to the earth. And it took for, I think it was Obatala, if I'm not mistaken, to calm him down and to apologize on behalf of all of the Orishas. And he went back around and healed them. So that's why now in a lot of the Santeria and Lukumi spiritual systems, Babalou, along with Baron Samedi, are the most feared Orishas because they rule over sickness and death, which I feel is fucked up, because if y'all would have treated him right from the get-go, and instead of laughing at him or helped him up, brushed him off, and let him keep dancing for the king, none of the other stuff wouldn't have even happened. Now, what does this have to do with Atlanta, and what does this have to do with the underground Atlanta being in the state that it's in now? It really started in Atlanta during the, I think it was the NCAA tournament or something like that, because around the time that I was living in Atlanta was also around the time that the Atlanta Hawks made it to the playoffs. And then I think there was a lot of NCAA stuff that was going on in Atlanta as well. So there was a lot of tourism going on in Atlanta, a lot of white people touring, a lot of tourists and stuff like that coming to Atlanta. And for all the people that are from Atlanta and all of that, especially around 2012 and 2013, the beginning parts of it, y'all remember how over there in the underground there used to be a lot of food trucks and a lot of carts out there where you would have these older men and sometimes older women would rent a cart, and they would go in front of the underground and in front of other places in downtown Atlanta, and they would set up shop, and they'll be selling things like food and candy, soaps, a lot of African stuff. Some of them had shoes, bags, just being an entrepreneur. And it gave a lot of people who were felons and people who were borderline about to be homeless, it gave them an avenue to be able to sell things legally and make enough money to feed their families. So it was a real good thing that was going on in Atlanta. And a lot of people see me with this blue shirt on that has a lot of the jazz greats on it, like Coltrane, Charlie Parker, and things like that. And they ask me, they're like, yo man, that's a dope ass shirt, man, where you get that shirt from? And I got that shirt back when I was in Atlanta, underground Atlanta, off of one of those carts. So like, you know, these people used to sell some real good stuff, and it was cheap too. Now, along that time when a lot of tourists and stuff like that was starting to come to Atlanta, I don't know if it was the mayor who did it. All I know is a lot of those carts started to disappear, and you started to see more and more and more and more homeless people in the streets of Atlanta, especially downtown. And I asked one of the people why, because I saw a guy and he was crying, and I was like, man, what's going on? And he was telling me how, I think he said the mayor upped the insurance and upped the prices on obtaining those carts, and as a result it took a lot of people out of business because they could no longer afford to use those carts anymore. And they just added so many different rules and guidelines and stipulations to a lot of those people that was buying those carts and renting out those carts. Ended up going out of business and ended up homeless because that was their only way of making money, and it was just taken from them. Then after that, because I remember I spent my New Year's watching the Peach drop at this club, free club that was in underground Atlanta. I think it was called Banana Wind, something like that. All the Atlanta cats that's out there, y'all can comment on the video and tell me which club that was, but I think it was called Banana Wind. Now, this was a popping club in downtown underground Atlanta, and it was a free club. You can get in there for free, and they made buku money because since it was free, everybody and their mama used to go to that club. But things were changing because a lot of those homeless people from outside started coming to that underground club trying to dance and trying to have a good time. But since they were homeless and they were bummy, just like Babalou, they ended up running a lot of people out because of the way they smelled or the way they looked or whatever. So then Banana Wind ended up changing their policy, saying that now it's still free, but you got to at least buy one drink in order to stay in the club. So the homeless people, they get smart. So they say, all right, cool. So we know a drink costs about $5 or $6. So if I can stay out here and beg and get at least $5 or $6, I can still go in the club and buy my one drink and just chill out. So that still didn't keep the homeless people from coming up in there and running everybody else out the club. So as a result, that club ended up getting shut down. And from that point on, it just caused a domino effect where every other month something else was closing down, something else was shutting down, and just all while I was there, just different things in underground Atlanta just kept getting shutting down left and right. Also, on the flip side, a lot of these homeless shelters were getting overpacked, and also me being from the inside looking out, a lot of these homeless people that was in these shelters were telling me, they was like, man, a lot of these higher ups that own these shelters are exploiting these people, meaning that these different organizations and things like that are giving millions and millions of dollars to these homeless shelters, and those millions and billions of dollars was meant to not only to help the homeless people that was in the shelter, but also to give the shelter itself a better, I guess, experience. Meaning that a lot of the shelters that I went to in Atlanta were ran like jails. I mean, especially the one that I went to in Bankhead, Jefferson Place. It was made from an old jail, and they ran it like a jail, literally. I mean, unless you was in a program which was hard as hell to get into, and you was in what they call general population, man, the shit was tough. I mean, the food was horrible, the living quarters were horrible, but these shelters would get millions of dollars in donations and millions of dollars in clothes and millions of dollars in food donations and all of that. But yet and still, these shelters looked and were ran like jail. Even a lot of the staff was disrespectful, and in a lot of ways it's coming back to bite Atlanta in the ass, literally, because I've been hearing about a lot of businesses and stuff been shutting down because there's too many homeless people that walk the streets at night. Like Gladys Knight's Chicken and Waffles down there on Peachtree and Pine ended up shutting down because the shelter Peachtree and Pine, aka one of the nastiest, most, man, I'd rather be on the street than going to Peachtree and Pine. That place was super horrible. But it goes to show you how people would exploit some people who they feel are defenseless. But like I said, it's coming back to bite them because they're losing a lot of money, especially downtown. The underground Atlanta was like a staple, and I don't know how they're doing now. I heard that a lot of underground Atlanta shut down, which it was getting to that point in 2016. I mean, they was trying to build casinos and build things down there, but nobody would want to touch down there because of the value is very low. And it's like, instead of them really doing stuff to help these homeless people get back on their feet, they're actually doing the opposite. I heard a lot of homeless shelters are shutting down, and I remember back in 2013 when I was staying at Jefferson Place, which was a shelter in Bankhead, the guy there was telling me back then that they were about to close down Jefferson Place in probably a few more months. So he was telling me, he was like, man, you need to get yourself together and get up out of here because this place isn't finna be around for too much longer. And I'm glad I listened, because that place ended up shutting down a few months after I left. And you can imagine how many homeless people had to leave there and are now walking the streets. So saying all that to say this, in this day and time, you really have to be careful how you treat people, especially a homeless person or somebody who looks like a bum, or even just a student at your school or a classmate or a friend or something like that may look a little bummy, simply because to them getting that knowledge and that wisdom is more important than staying up to date with all the latest fashions and things like that. And I just feel like that this is just a principle that everyone should honor and everyone should think about when you see someone on the street or you see someone that's down on their luck or something like that. If the spirit is leading you to help that person, no matter how they may look on the outside, just help that person. Because just like that story with me and Sam, you may be down on your luck one day and people don't forget about when you help them. I mean, even the situation with me and Al Poe, the reason why I talk about him a lot in my podcast and the reason why me and him is so cool, because in May of 2014, a couple weeks before I was about to move into my new apartment that I ended up getting, I got evicted from my last apartment and I was homeless again. Didn't have nowhere to go, just needed somewhere to stay until my other apartment was ready. And Al Poe, because me and him worked at Walmart together and me and him was already cool, Al Poe offered to let me stay with him for a couple days so I can get back on my feet. I never forgot about that. And fast forward to now, I told him that whenever I get myself together and he needs anything, I got him. So I know I've been talking for a long time and I just been talking about a lot of stuff, but the main thing that I want to get across with this podcast is, just like my mom say, you never know who you're entertaining out here when you're just talking to random people. That person that you're talking to, that you help them out, that person may be an undercover boss. I mean, in this day and time, you just don't know. And I'm just grateful for all of the Alegbas and Babalou in my life that helped me out. So, all right, y'all. I hope y'all got something out of this podcast. And just like I said at the end of this, stay tuned, because I'm going to show the new video by Lady V the Poet called The Revolution. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, BandClap TV, Facebook, BandClap TV, YouTube, rapper PBP. And this has been another episode of BandClap TV. We out.
You're exactly where you ultimately need to be. Society's lies tell me that I need to be held back. My education and intellect cause mental attack. Always 2 steps ahead while you're 5 miles back. Negativity, go ahead and cancel that. Cause it's time to take charge of them dreams of yours. It's time to be the revolution that you're praying for. Kick down obstacles, open pathways and corridors. Make it a reality, not more than what you're hoping for. It's time to be the revolution. Be the revolution, be the revolution. That's right, be the revolution. Be the revolution, be the revolution. I'm Lady V the Poet, and thank you for your attention.
better be the revolution that you're praying for. Kick down obstacles, open pathways and corridors. Take those risks that shake and keep you awake at night. Turn darkness to a bright and gleaming flashlight. Tell them haters that the past is done and over with. Build a crew that builds up with encouragement. Today and tomorrow, I look forward to the steps ahead. I'm on a path and my whole life is faith-led. God is working behind the scenes for my victory. I find favor in only what He chooses best for me. First few steps are the hardest, but they're necessary. Lead you exactly where you ultimately need to be. Society's lies tell me that I need to be held back. My education and intellect cause mental attack. Always 10 steps ahead while you're 5 miles back. Negativity, go on ahead and cancel that. Cause it's time to take charge of the dreams of yours. It's time to be the revolution that you're praying for. Kick down obstacles, open pathways and corridors. Make your reality more than what you're hoping for. You better be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution. You better be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution. You better be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution. You better be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution. Your voice is a weapon, a thunderbolt, and a sacred gift. To shut your mouth and be quiet, that's foolishness. The world will try to wrap you up in caution tape. Break the shackles and then you gotta elevate. My voice is proud like the words of prophecy. Bring the truth to the light so blind eyes can see. Never checking for dark shadows of yesterday. Strength and power resides in each word I say. You gotta be the revolution that they talk about. They hope your whisper won't ever really shout out loud. Faith needs to be stronger than the fear inside. Stand up tall and feel the fire burning in my eyes. You gotta want it a lot more than you're scared of it. Keep the focus on goals and accomplishments. Purpose driven, you gotta be the revolution. Courage in your actions is the only solution. Speak up loud and watch the world pay attention. Truth in your soul will make the people listen. Pump your fists if you're the change that you wanna see. Time is now, wake up to reality. You gotta be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution. You better be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution. You better be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution. You better be the revolution. Be the revolution. Be the revolution.